This episode is powered by DENMeditation.com. Though meditation is the primary focus, the bigger goal is for people to understand and love themselves, thus creating more harmony in the community at large. To find out more about Den Meditation's teacher training programs, retreats, and all things Den Meditation, go to DENMeditation.com. Welcome back to DENTalks podcast. This is Tal, your host and the founder of Den Meditation. This episode is so mind-bending in such a great way. So listen to the whole thing, even if you have to do it in parts. We are lucky enough today to have Sheila and Marcus Gillette on. Sheila actually has been channeling THEO, which are 12 archangels, and she's been doing this since the 60s. A near-death experience is what actually was the impetus, and we get into that story on here as well. What I love about this episode, and there is a good chunk of this episode, I think at least 45 minutes, if not more, of THEO being channeled and me asking questions. And when I say questions, I mean like the bigger questions about what is holding us back in humanity, what is going on, why did we choose this incarnation? What does ADHD and autism and all of that mean within our society today? We get into some deep stuff in THEO answers. So that's pretty incredible. But we bookend this conversation with a love story, and it's a story between the two of them. And what I love about bookending it that way is they kind of show you when you allow yourself to kind of heed the advice of THEO and actually go into your true self and actually feel the vibrations and understand how much you're capable of as a human and as a human experience, what you can attract into your life, and then what you can do as a couple. So it's really cool to bookend it kind of with the relationship and what it's about. And in the middle and that meet is THEO guiding us once again, as they have done so many times for so many people, in a beautiful way. So what an honor and a treat for all of us to have these answers. We will have them on again because, again, it's to get this information just feels like an honor. The personal practice, THEO is leading a meditation. So stick around to the end and get your personal practice. Really hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, remember to subscribe. It really helps us out. If you want to leave a review somewhere, also really, really helpful. And tell your friends. We just appreciate your support. We love this community. Enjoy the episode. Are you in the same house in different rooms, or are we in totally different places?
We're in the same house.
I love that.
In different places in the same house.
That's so funny. I love that. Look, I'm sure for you guys it was fascinating during COVID because you already work together so much and you are together. Did it change for you even in COVID, like not having, or for you guys, you're like, this is what we do?
It's just what we do. We've worked together like this for 25 years.
Wow.
And a lot of people say, gosh, is that too much togetherness? But quite frankly, he's doing his work and I'm doing my work, and we meet at meals. It's, and passing back and forth. But it just works. We really like doing it and working together in the same place.
How long were you together? Like, how long have you guys been together as a couple? Like, how long?
26 years. 26 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations. I mean, that in of itself is a whole podcast, how to be a successful couple.
Well, we just wrote a book about it. The Art of Relationship, discover the magic of unconditional love. And it goes across all relationships, not just primary, but particularly the most important is the relationship to the self.
Is that, if you could think of one sentence to describe the message of that book, would that be it?
Oh, love yourself. Yeah. It changes everything.
Well, Marcus, I like what you usually say is loving yourself changes everything, which is really, really true. It changes everything in your life if you have that solid state in your being peaceful inside.
Yeah.
When you two found...
I was just going to say, we have a link, Tal, if you want to give your listeners, which is just asktheo.com/love. And we've got a gift there for them, an experience with THEO. And they can also purchase the book there if they want to as well.
So that's amazing. Because that's all everybody's always asking about is relationships. How do you do it? And so when you two met each other and you started your relationship, do you both feel like you were solid in a place of loving yourself? Or were you lucky enough to somehow manage it as you grew together?
Both. I don't think it's an unending process at all. I think that we just peel back the layers, because we built up limiting beliefs from whatever human experience we've had, not only in this life, but others that are influential now in this time we're living in. So I think we just discover more about ourselves and that self-acceptance.
I love that. It's interesting because you guys were you young when you met? How old were you?
No, no. I was 52.
Got it. Is this first solid relationship, second for both of you? Like, where are we in the relationship roller coaster?
It's second for Marcus, third for me. Third time's the
Yeah.
charm.
3 times is a charm.
But I had long-term relationships or marriages actually before. And I didn't think, well, I thought I'd like to have a relationship, but I didn't need one. I was fine living like I was, and I was working a lot. So Marcus and I were introduced by a mutual friend. And I said to a friend of mine, when she said, well, do you think you'll be in a relationship? And I said, they'd have to break my door down because I don't go out looking for a relationship. And he literally broke my door down at the Phoenician on the patio. That's what happened.
That's so sweet.
The first chapter of our book is called Our Multidimensional Love Story. And it explains a little bit about us, how we got together, the synchronicities, a couple really wonderful, kind of miraculous things that happened. We went down to the Havasupai Indian Reservation on our first date for 5 days, which isn't something I'd necessarily recommend for anybody on a first date. To go on a camping trip. And we had some experiences. We had some extraordinary things happen, not the least of which was a collapse of time and space, Tal, which we had an awareness that happened in this moment or moments or however long it lasted for, where we actually literally were in another time together, sitting outside a sweat lodge down in the Havasupai Indian Reservation, just kind of waiting our turn. There was a couple of Native children playing with us and had been kind of latched onto us. And we had an experience, the four of us, in that moment of seeing each other in a different time, different clothing. Children were the same, in a different, they were dressed differently. And Sheila and I looked at each other and she says, are you seeing what I'm seeing right now?
Wow, you both saw it at the same time.
Saw it at the exact same time, yeah. So when you have simultaneous experiences like that, it's pretty indisputable. Whoa, okay, so yeah, we kind of had a sense we'd been together in a previous incarnation, but now we knew for sure. And then it all unfolded. And to skip ahead, when we came back out, we came to my house. I invited a bunch of friends. I was living in Scottsdale at the time. And Sheila was up in Colorado. And I brought a bunch of friends over to the house to meet Sheila and THEO. And she channeled and everybody left. And we sat outside that night. And I just said, so, gosh, what are we going to do on our second date? And she said, I don't date. And so I said, well, I guess we'll just have to get married. And that is a true story. And it's exactly what happened. And, I had no intention of proposing to her that night, but it felt right. And it was right,
So you basically went on one date.
We went on one date.
For 5 days.
For 5 days.
Right. And also lifetimes. So it was a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, and it was crazy, but it was awesome. There was no doubtedness about it that was made it easy.
So Sheila, do you ask THEO ever about, like, how separate do you keep your personal life from THEO? Like, do you ever go, hey, THEO, like, I got this guy?
Well, yeah, just like anybody or everybody. But they don't tell me everything because, they just would give me cryptic messages.
It's like, what's a cryptic message you received?
Well, one I got, which was quite profound. I'd never heard them speak like that at all. And they said, this relationship is anointed and ordained. And I went, whoa, what does that mean? But that was like, oh, okay. But when we met, literally, Tal, he took my breath away. We hear those love songs and stuff, but literally I couldn't breathe because the energy between us was so powerful. And it wasn't just, oh, he's attractive, like we see attractive people. It was this is big. Why is this going on? Who is this guy? This is a big thing energetically, because I felt him come in the building. I have all my psychic abilities and intuitive abilities, and it happens to me. I feel energy wherever I am. So I felt this really strong energy, and I started just casually looking around to say, wow, where is that coming from? And it wasn't necessarily, oh, this is because it's a romance. It was just more high energy. And he was the last to meet our group, to show up at the table. And he walked up to the table, and it was like getting kicked in your stomach. All my air went out. It was like, I can't breathe. But It was so powerful. And then I realized there's something here bigger than the both of us. And then it's unfolded. This is what we're supposed to be doing together. And I had known all along in my life, doing this work over 5 decades now, that I was to have a partner to do it with. And it just hadn't happened. It just didn't unfold that way. And so before we met, I just decided, well, maybe I'm wrong. We all go through that. Well, maybe not yet. And it was just not yet. We both had to be ready. I wouldn't have been ready before that moment to accept him in my life, or he accepting me. I mean, we had to come to a certain, I think, maturity in ourselves to be able to have the relationship we have.
Now, at that point, you had been channeling and for over 20 years, right? At the point
25.
of your 25 years, right? And so talk about it, because you had 3 kids when this all first occurred to you. You were not, just so for the listeners, it wasn't like every single day since you were a child, you'd wake up and you were able to channel. This is something that kind of there was an impetus that kind of allowed this connection to begin.
Yeah, it happened spontaneously after a near-death experience. I had pulmonary embolus after the birth of my youngest daughter. And I was in intensive care, and I felt like I had an elephant sitting on my chest. I could not breathe. And of course, people who've been through the pandemic have had some experience with that. But that's how it was. My lungs were full of fluid. And so my family was being prepared for my imminent death that day. And I just kept saying, hey, God, give me a job. I'll do anything. I had 2 little kids at home, and I had a brand new baby, and I wanted to stay on the planet and be their mother. And so I just kept repeating, please give me a job. And I had a miraculous healing in intensive care. I had some of the things about you hear about near-death experiences. I had the bright light. The room became extremely bright. But I saw movement at the end of my bed, and Jesus stood at the end of my bed. And I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. And he crossed his arms like this. And when he did so, he smiled at me. And I was just mesmerized by his eyes, so much love emanating. And when he smiled, I heard in my inner mind hearing, like we hear our own voice, but I heard a distinct male voice say, remember, my child, you are loved. And at that point, I felt my crown open up, and I just felt this warmth start going down inside in every cell. And as it passed through the trunk of my body, I felt as if I could take a deep breath. And I started getting better. And this was a moment out of time. As I tell you this story, it's not as detailed as I could, but it's still as fresh in my knowing about it as it was that moment. And that was in 1969. So I was in the hospital about a month. And when I got home, about 6 months later, I had all kinds of psychic phenomena happening to me. Internally, externally, I could hear messages as I heard Jesus's voice that day. And then I tranced spontaneously. spontaneously and became a direct voice trance medium. Channeling wasn't even a word used then for what I do.
If you hadn't seen Jesus at the foot of your bed during the healing, do you think you would have just thought you were crazy? Was there something about
Oh,
his
I thought
presence that gave
you,
permission to this?
there were moments, it wasn't crazy. It was just so unusual,
Yeah.
to say the least. And this wasn't a time that these kinds of things were spoken about. And I started seeking any kind of books or anything. And the only book that I found initially was a book about Edgar Cayce. And it was exactly what was happening to me. So that gave me some idea. But the angels, THEO, they were the teachers teaching me how to do this, because I didn't have a mentor that could say, oh, you're okay. Except I was tested in 1976 by scientists, physicists that were researching parapsychology. And I really appreciated doing that because, to your point, it gave me the housekeeping seal of approval that no, you're not crazy, you're psychic. So that kind of gave me a good foundation. But I was being given information I could not ever have known about the future, prophetic stuff, but information about people. People would ask about like deceased loved ones, and information would come through that there's no way I could have known that. So there were confirmations that were happening daily. So I trusted it. But I also held the commitment that I got to be here, still in this body, to be my children's mother
Because of this.
because I made that commitment.
Did you always connect the two? Like when it first started happening
Yes.
to you, did you initially go, I know exactly what this is. This was the
I
deal I
did,
made?
because it was so profound. And when I was getting the inner messages, it was like the one I got in the hospital. It was not my voice. It was very distinct, another energy coming through. But I had so many phenomenal external experiences that could not have been explained. My bed levitated in the middle of the night. Whenever spirit wanted to talk to me, it was,
Wake up.
yeah, exactly. You're not able to do this on your own. If I'd sit in a chair, the chair would physically move, and it would have been impossible for me to move the chair myself. So there were things like that I was given, that this is more than what you could perceive or give, and the information was far beyond my knowledge.
Do you remember the first piece of information that came in that you were like, okay?
Actually, there was a woman in the town I was living in who talked to me about automatic writing. I didn't know what it was. And she said, you want to try it? And we were having coffee one morning, our children really small. And so she told me how to do it. And I got a message from my grandmother that said, I'm here, can you feel me? And not only could I feel me, because she'd taken my hand and was moving the pin.
Wow.
But the room got really cold, like a refrigerator cold. And my teeth, when you get scared, your teeth scatter. My teeth started doing that, and I was just shaking. And I was sitting on a bar stool at her bar in her kitchen. I had to get down and walk over and sit on a sofa because I had to compose myself. And then I was intrigued. It was like, oh, I want to do that again, which I did. But then her husband's father was in World War II and had died in World War II when he was 2 years old. And his father came through and gave him all kinds of information I couldn't have known. And then he checked it out, and it was true. So there were things that started happening like that. But most important message that came through was Watergate. And
what came through?
All kinds of information of what was going on. And they said, the president needs to be told to stop what he's doing. And I was like, I'm not the one going to do that.
You're like, what am I going to pick up the phone? Be like,
Yeah, exactly. You know what that would have ended up in. So it was just, I had all this information that had been given me. 16 years later, I met John Ehrlichman when I was living in Santa Fe, and we had a chat about it, and I shared with him the information, and he said everything I had gotten was true. So it was validated, but it just takes some time for stuff to evolve into the ability to know the information. And that's what I've found working with THEO is you may be told something today and 10 years later it happens because it's just information to prepare us. That's what happened when I wrote my first book. They told me I was going to write a book. Well, that was pretty amazing in itself because I didn't fancy myself a writer. But then I thought I had to do it right now. I got to go out, and I kept trying to push the doors open. And it was really 10 years after they said that would be happening. And then when it was time, all the doors flew open at publishing houses and they were interested. And it was quite a different experience than my trying to force something to come true.
Has that been one of your biggest lessons in working with them? Just learning flow and learning presence?
Oh, yeah. Not that my humanness doesn't still want to, I want it now, that immediate gratification stuff. But, after you live long enough, and we all know this, you can look at hindsight and see it couldn't, like Marcus and I meeting, couldn't have happened before. And it's not that it could not have happened because he lived in Scottsdale. My best friend lived in Phoenix, and I was in Colorado, but I would come and visit her. And we were in the same neighborhoods, in the same restaurants, in this, probably many times, and never met, never crossed paths.
Right.
So,
that is,
timing is everything.
Well, on that note, do you feel, or have you ever asked them, like, did you contract to do this job previously and you weren't ready and that's why the instance happened with your daughter? Or is this something totally new that came into this lifetime because you asked?
When I've asked THEO, or when other people have asked them, how did you guys get together?
What was your first date?
THEO said by agreement. So from that, I don't know if the agreement was in the hospital or Jesus said, hey, you guys come over here, she's ready. Or, but they said by agreement. I, as a kid growing up, I had some psychic experience. I think we all do, but nothing to the degree of what happened to me after this. I mean, there was just no comparison to that. But I had a belief of possibility. I believed that these things could happen. I believed in psychic ability. I believed in reincarnation. So maybe that's why they chose me, that I could believe in them.
Or maybe you'd already chosen them and that was part of the reason you believed that stuff.
Quite possible.
So, did you have siblings, or do you have siblings?
I have a deceased brother.
Do you talk to THEO about him, or can you channel him in now that you?
No, I don't feel the need to. Both my parents are deceased as well, and I feel them periodically. And that's the blessing of having the belief that I do have, is that and having a near-death experience, knowing that I could have chosen not to be here.
Yeah.
It was a choice that I stay in my body. I know there was a moment I could have just closed my eyes and never opened them again. So knowing that, I don't have any fear of death because I'm not afraid. A lot of people say, well, even my mother said to me when she was transitioning, she said, well, I've never done this before. even though she had a belief in reincarnation, it was just something she hadn't experienced before in her present life. And I thought, man, I'm fortunate because I've walked in two worlds. I know what that feels like. So that was a blessing in itself.
Do you feel like the lack of fear of death changes the way you live?
Yes. More appreciation and gratitude, even for the challenges.
Yeah.
But as I've grown with the teachings of THEO, I've realized that challenges are just the curriculum of our life, and we've chosen to come here and grow, and it's how we perceive those challenges that changes.
I mean,
Instead of being hard, they can be not easy in the sense of the challenge could stretch you a lot and grow you a lot, but in knowing that, just knowing, well, squeeze every moment out of this because you came here to get it.
Well, I love the words curriculum. Like, I think that's such a smart way to say it, because imagine if we all had that perspective when things come up of like, oh, this is just today's school lesson. And we didn't always like every class we took in school.
Right, right.
What a different way we would approach it. What a different way, because, a lot of the victimhood, I think, would release, which is, I think, so much of our problems, right? We automatically kind of tilt into like, why me? How do I do this? I can't do this. It's happening to me again, versus, oh, it's another lesson.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about is feeling victimized.
Yeah.
By it. And I certainly have had those moments.
I think we all
I
have.
remember walking around my living room railing and saying, THEO, why do I have to go through this? And at that point being told, so you'll have compassion. And that kind of set me back. And Marcus was on his own spiritual journey before we met too. He was kind of under the radar doing his seeking. And that's another thing that brought us together, is that he was interested in what I did. Our mutual friend had given him my first book, and that's why we met. I say to people, I wrote that book to meet my husband.
Well, that's interesting. So Marcus, she talks about how, energetically she could feel you in the building before you even came in. And then obviously when you came in front, it confirmed that's the feeling I'm feeling. So when you read her first book, was there, beyond just spiritually seeking, was there a weird like energy for you, or something that you could tell there was a deeper connection?
I was a little slower on the uptake, Tal.
Most men are.
Not to stereotype me as a typical man, the book was amazing. I read The Fifth Dimension, Channels to a New Reality. She wrote that in '88, and it foretold. It was really a groundbreaking book, actually. She and Brian Weiss had the same editor at Simon and Schuster in 1988, and I just loved the book. And there was this picture of this really beautiful woman on the back of the book, and my friend calls up and says, "Oh, by the way, Sheila's coming to town." This is 2 years later. She gave me the book in '95. And 2 years later, she calls up and says, "Hey, Sheila's coming to town. You want to meet her?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to meet her. That'd be great." And so I was a fan, basically, and she, when I met her that night, we were at the Phoenician Resort here in Paradise Valley. When I met her that night, she was softer, prettier than she looked on the book cover, and full of joy. There was a real vibrant, fun, positive energy about her. And but no, I was not as energetically affected in that moment. But it didn't take long, as I allowed myself to open up to the possibility, because I knew something was going on. There was a connection.
Yeah,
I was very attracted to her. I guess I didn't want to be overly presumptuous either, because I had read her book. I knew all about her life. I knew all about, I'd gotten to know THEO a little bit. But it was profound. What happened over the next few weeks was really profound. And I think, and we write about this in the first chapter of the book, Tal. I'll just share one quick story. And we just finally kind of came out of the closet to share this story because it was so personal. When we met each other, the second time we met each other was a month later. And this is when we were getting ready to go to the Havasupai on this vision quest down to the Indian reservation down there. We spent the night up in Flagstaff. And we went out to dinner at the Olive Garden. That was like our first formal date at the Olive Garden, Flagstaff, Arizona. We kissed each other goodnight in the lobby, went to bed. I had my roommate who was the trip leader, and Sheila and her friend that she was talking about. And in the middle of the night, I woke up at 2:15 in the morning. I looked over, I could hear my roommate snoring, and I saw a clock that said 2:15 on the red numbers. And I looked up, and Sheila had projected herself out of her body. Her light body was hovering above my body, my physical body. And I'd never had an experience like that. I had been studying out of body experiences for years. In fact, 2 months before I met Sheila, I went to the Monroe Institute because I wanted to really kind of get more adept, at conscious astral travel. And it was to this day, I can't really describe the experience. I mean, it was so ineffable. It was just like this light body merging with mine in a way that it was just an experience in which I really can't even describe it further. But that was how we got together. I mean, that night, being at the Olive Garden. Next day, we were horseback riding down then I went down to the lobby about 6 in the morning. There she was. And I said to her, I know where you are last night. And the only thing she said to me was, "Oh, did you get me?" Like this little coy, "Oh, did you get me?" Yeah. Uh-huh. And so she literally came and visited me that night out of her body. And that was the beginning of a series of events over the next several days that were kind of extraordinary. And on the horseback ride down, I pulled my horse up next to hers at one point. And I said, "Well, you don't even give a guy a chance, do you?"
I love that. I love it.
This is a done deal, man. I mean, but no, but it was amazing. And to answer your question, just finally, it took a little while longer than it did for Sheila, but she's a little more energetically attuned to that energetics than I was at the time. But it didn't take long.
But I love how you studied out of again, how all these pieces came into place. Like if you hadn't studied that, would you have dismissed it? Would you have turned around and you know what I mean? But the fact that you had purposely gone and studied, you were so ready for that moment.
Well, I think what we're starting to realize more today than ever before, Tal, is that our belief system is all about personal experience, right? It's just knowing. It's not really book learning or, it's really more about our personal experience. So had I gone to the Monroe Institute or not, the experience itself was indisputable. It happened. Right. I experienced it, right? And one of our favorite sayings is the old Sufi saying that only a fool believes another's word over their own experience, right? So it was just all about, that was the beginning of multiple experiences that we continue to have to this day beyond, the physical, limitations of the physical body or the third dimensional reality. So it's, THEO's teachings are all about expressing in human form our multidimensionality, because we're so much more than our physical bodies. So that's what makes this relationship so much fun. Today, 25 years later, we're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary in April. And
congratulations.
And
going to the Olive Garden?
We're going to go to the Olive
No,
Garden.
they all closed. I just read
right.
that they're closing.
Actually, Tal, we're going to go to Red Lobster, but
same idea. You're on it. What a beautiful story. That's pretty amazing. Can we talk to THEO for a little?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
I would love that.
It takes just a few seconds for them to come in. There is a difference in the voice. I don't know if you've heard THEO, but I like to warn people if they hadn't. So here we go.
We'll warn our audience for those who've never seen it or heard it.
It is the beginning, is it not?
Yes. Thank you, THEO, for being here and allowing us to talk with you.
We are appreciative of the opportunity to serve. You may ask.
Thank you. We hear a lot that choosing to be a human in this incarnation is like winning the lottery, or it's a win. Can you explain more of why that is the case, and why do people or beings choose to be in the human form?
It's an exquisite opportunity to have a body, to experience all of your sensory perceptivity in your physicality to also navigate with your earth suit, your human body, this beautiful planet, and to experience each other in a way that is not experienced in just the energy vibrational frequency that is a soul, that is not encased in a material physical form. So you have the ability to touch and be touched, to have these sensory perceptions of experience. Your soul is much larger than your body. And know this, the soul chooses the body, the human experience. It is not the other way around. You are a spiritual soul having a human experience. And there are billions of choices of experience. The earth is but one. But it has its magnificence, as we started to speak about, having a body. And the body is miraculous in and of itself.
How come the body, and it is miraculous, how come it is so, if it's kind of the suit, why is it so complicated, the body itself, and in a way that then has disease? Or did we bring on the disease?
So it's through experience. You do not ask that of your computer, do you? Why is it so complicated? It is in its form because of the way it is used. The physical body is that which is your ability to navigate the planet comfortably in the atmosphere you're in. The soul gives the body the life. The body itself can be kept alive when the soul leaves the body, and you're aware of that with science and medicine, but the brain cannot. The soul gives the brain its electricity, let's say, its life. And so it is when the soul leaves the body, they check for brain activity. For that is the one thing that cannot be kept alive by machinery.
It's so interesting because it's the mind sometimes is what gets in the way for a lot of us of living through our truth. And so can you talk a little bit how interesting it's the soul and the mind are really linked, but yet sometimes the mind is what can get in the way of our own growth?
And isn't that true in computer science? They're trying to give the computer brain the activity of the human. And so we find it amusing that they're trying to create a machine to work with intelligence, and you already have one. It's a human body. However, that artificial intelligence will do the same thing in wanting to control as the human brain does intellectually, but it does not have the capability of the solid state of unconditional love that the soul has. And the experience of that, it's very, let's say, mechanical. However, humans have given great import to intelligence. And that is important because the intellect is the problem solver. And it is the area of learning in the human experience, cataloging experience, if you would. The soul has a different way of absorbing that information and retaining it. Many call it the Akashic record. That is just a word utilized to support the retainage of information and experience. And in that retaining, it's in every cell of your body because it's in the vibrational frequencies of your soul.
So is the intellect the problem solver, or is it only the problem solver in one way, and the true depth of problem solving is through the soul?
It is a problem solving, idea thinking apparatus, you might say, or section of the mind with what it's been trained to do. The soul is multidimensional. And so it has a broader ability to disseminate information and to understand it. So there's a difference in the soul level understanding and intellectual understanding.
What is the biggest problem facing, I would say, humanity in our growth or on this earth plane?
Limiting beliefs.
Hmm.
For each experience gives one an outer view of the self. And so a limiting belief can be experienced in a conversation by an opinion about you that someone else has that you adopt as your own. And so you continually hold that belief until you rewrite that script. Those events where beliefs about yourself that are simply untrue first begin is history. Those events don't change, but how you perceive them can. When you look for the gifts and blessings of the learning gained there, and you can change a belief.
How can we change a belief?
With love. Loving that part of self that didn't know what it knows now as you do, and giving support and love to that part of self that first adopted or created the belief. And drawing it forward from that time or event, for oftentimes those parts of self are frozen in that moment. And then when energy is similar to it later in life, that belief can be reaffirmed at a different age. And that's where you see repetitive patterning.
Does this go to the point of limiting beliefs or also limiting belief in our own power, not realizing that, like you were just saying, our vibration goes into the past and future if we're using time as
Yes,
a descriptor?
yes. It gives one a very myopic view of self and life. And what we encourage you to do is broaden the aperture.
How, a silly question maybe, but I'm curious, how is it like, if you could use a metaphor that we understand here, what is it like to be observing us here in the human form on this earth planet?
At times humorous,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
even because you keep repeating the same things over and over again. And that's why we're here, to teach you how to change those beliefs.
It's interesting because repetition, I think, why is repetition so natural for us?
It's the way there's external proof. However, and that's how you learn. Repetition is good in learning. If you continue to hear something, you can glean a broader perspective at times. And that's why it's important to check into self as you have repeated messages given you that may be untrue that you've accepted. It's good to check out the truth on the inner. Each has a truth barometer in you. You know when truth is spoken to you. You have a visceral experience. Or if you speak truth to someone else, your body lets you know.
How You said earlier, there's so many other experiences you could choose to come into. As far as beings on a planet in relation to Earth, what would be the closest planet? I'm sure it's one we've never heard of with beings on it.
Most you would never hear of because there's billions of them.
Yep.
And science is bringing that forth now as proof that the earth is only one choice of human experience or physical experience. There are many other. In your particular universe, there could be as many as 40 billion.
Wow.
So it's important to understand that with this myopic view of the earth only the one existence is very, again, myopic, very small viewpoint. So again, with science, that aperture is already broadening because the astronomers or cosmologists are expanding the vision through now telescopes and flight into space.
When you talk about the different dimensions and, fourth dimension and fifth dimension, is that myopic viewpoint part of that shift of frequency?
It is. So there are 12 dimensions about the earth. You are now living in the vibrational frequency of the fifth dimension. That is why there's a greater interest that is beyond the physical, a greater knowledge that there is a soul inhabiting a body that is larger than the body itself, and that is in connection to the multidimensionality. And as there is this experience that humans are having now of this broader perspective, will expand into the sixth dimension, which is the recognition of the masters that you are fully. And the experience of the other six dimensions in the 12 are etheric and would be felt and known. And that's part of the multidimensional experience and expression that the eternal soul can have.
When you say we are living in the fifth dimension, is that everyone on this plane is living? It's because sometimes you hear people say, oh, you need to try and rise to the fifth dimension. So is everyone
No, you're
stepped
living in
into
it.
it?
It's a vibrational frequency that's
Right.
much more refined. The third dimension is your physical reality, your physical body. It has a greater density to it in the sense of the energetics of frequencies. And so now there is being this evolution, if you would, of consciousness that is now the fifth dimension. And that's why you're seeing the chaos on the planet, because the changes necessary to live in this higher frequency that is the recognition of the oneness of your species.
So basically, the lower frequency things still exist, but they're struggling because it doesn't match the frequency and they're falling away.
Yes, they still
Is that what you're
exist.
saying?
And some of the foundations that are now crumbling are in that spectrum of vibration, such as the political structures that no longer work, the economic structures that are being redone, even the innovation and the businesses that no longer can be sustained on this planet and new are being formed. There will always be innovation. If you think of what's happened in the last 100 years, innovations have changed your planet.
Mm. And it feels as if, especially with technology, they're happening at a more rapid pace. Is that part of
Yes,
moving up frequency too? Or is that the fact that it
it's
feels like it's
coming to
happening
match it.
faster? Mm.
And that and out of the chaos that's on the planet that everybody's experiencing with these changes will come to order in a new way of being, a new order for the world, which is in the highest good of all the people and other species.
And speaking of highest good, when people try and figure out what their purpose is or what they're here to do, how does that vibrate with the highest good?
People always are looking for purpose, and the purpose is life. You've chosen life on this planet. Life is happening through you and for you, not to you. You are creators. And so there is the ability to recognize the power of your creative abilities. That's why the interest in manifestation and law of attraction, not just for the phenomena of it, it is the way of life. And when you all begin to recognize and use the energies in their proper ways, there will be ease and grace for all. And not this separation and division that's been. But there's enough for everybody on this planet.
So I was just going to ask, so the idea is if you can step into your truth and live within that vibration that is of you, that then allows you to kind of, what you're saying, there's enough for everyone, there's abundance for everyone, tap into that versus this idea of separation or scarcity.
Yes, and we created a process called soul integration process that allows ones to recognize the beliefs that are limiting them and to change them, and to live from not fear-based thinking to what if something horrible is going to happen, to what if something great will happen or wonderful. It's laying new neural pathways in the brain from the old default system of fright, fight, fear, freeze into possibility thinking and the ability to work within the quantum field or the creative energy that's on the planet.
How did we create fear? In the religious world, you know the story of Adam and Eve. Where did fear truly then develop from if we're coming in as these pure bodies?
It developed in the human body because the greatest thing when a soul enters the body is survival. So in the beginning, in fast life of entering the bodies, when you were living in caves, the primal brain, or some call it the reptilian brain, it had these neural pathways to keep you safe. For an example, you would look both ways before coming out of the cave because the tiger could eat you.
Right.
But now that functionality is still happening and there's no tiger.
When you mentioned
So this is the need for the shifts and changes. It's not that you shouldn't have that sense of perceptivity to know if you're safe in your environment or not. That will continue. It's natural, but it will not control you.
The control. You mentioned the reptilian brain. People say that sometimes we have reptilian blood, or they talk about being mixed race as far as species, mixed species. Is that true?
No.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. How many, are there other species or higher intelligence life looking out for us?
Yes. Understand this, they've always been here. And could you imagine it's your neighbor? Because the earth is just one choice of experience. You could choose to be what you call an alien that comes in the unidentified flying objects that you call the UFO or ships. You all have the choice to do that as well.
There's been a lot of talk that everyone comes in with guardian angels or certain energetic beings that are always with them. Is that true?
That is true. There are legions of angels, and we are 12 archangels. It could be thought of as managers or supervisors of those legions that are here to teach and assist. And they are mentors and guides. And the only thing we would say to all of you would be ask for their assistance. You forget to ask, and they're just waiting for you to ask them.
Do they stay, are they only with you? Is it as if I have my own and so has their own? Or in these legions, are there direct assignments?
They are specifically to you in that questioning, but know that's enlarged into the greater teaching. So there may be, you start with one or two, and that group grows as you grow.
Mm. And do they stay with you as a body or do they stay with you as a soul? So are they reincarnating with you as the soul chooses to make other choices, or is it just for
They
this
change
incarnation?
as you gain knowledge and abilities. They're not far away. The soul is resonant to them.
And is the soul different than angels? Meaning, can someone at some point, this soul, become an angel, or is these two different energetic
For an
species?
example, we've never incarnated.
Right.
We vibrationally adjust this physical body of the Chela from which we speak to have this ability to speak to as we are now. But we have not incarnated into a physical form. There are some who do, yes.
So, speaking of which, did you always speak through Sheila only in this lifetime, or had there been other lifetimes that your relationship with her existed?
We have known this one for many lifetimes.
Hmm. And is the idea of reincarnation what we are taught, this idea that you constantly bring in the lessons from the last? Is that what it's about, always experiencing new experiences to become a fuller embodied soul?
It's not linear as you would think of it, like you do your educational system from kindergarten to university, but it could be seen in a lifetime as that.
Right.
However, as we've spoken of soul integration, the fragmented aspects of the soul that have lessons that come in now are brought forth from other experiences are not linear, not necessarily the last life. It could be 2,000 years ago or 100 or 500, depending on what the soul wants to learn and resolve and understand.
Right. Do you, speaking of the linear kindergarten through university, how should we, as a parent or even just as a member of society, how should we be teaching our kids? And are we
Live
doing it
your
wrong?
life authentically. The children are watching, and love them. Do not judge them. Teach them how to be in their authenticity. Listen to them. The children are now coming on a very high frequency, and you can observe that. And there are those now recognizing the educational system needs to change to accommodate these beings that are coming with greater knowledge.
How should they change the system? Like, what are ways of
It is
easy change?
structured for adults, it's not structured for children. And many say there are special needs children. No, they're all special. And so the accommodating, the creativity and the wisdom of that soul coming in. So the system has been created for adults' comfort. Yes, they need to be taught socialization, but not kept in line because the teacher doesn't like noise.
Hmm.
Yes?
Yes. How, when you mention they're all special, these new labels, autism spectrum, ADHD, things of that nature, are those in reality something, or are those labels we're putting on just an energy field that we don't quite understand?
Their labels you're putting on energy fields you don't understand. And understanding can bring forth greater productivity of these individuals.
do you recommend a different way of working with those children than what is happening now? Is it not using the labels, or is it?
Labels then limit,
Yeah.
do they not? So we would say the preference is not to label, but to communicate and to find ways. Each of you learn differently. There are people who learn visually. That's how they absorb information. There are others who learn auditorily. They absorb information through hearing, listening. And so these should be identified in the individual rather than forcing them to learn in a way that is not comfortable or that they're capable of. It's not that they're not intelligent. It's just they learn differently. They absorb information differently. One size does not fit all. And that's how you gain your intuitive abilities as well. They come to you in ways that are psychologically, emotionally comfortable, and how you learn best. So if information is coming from the angelic realm to you, if you're an auditory learner, you will hear the message. If you're visual, you'll have visions, clairvoyance. And then, yes, all the other sensory perceptivities can be developed, but that would be primary. So knowing how someone learns primarily is the best way to teach them.
What about autoimmune diseases, which seems to be taking over? It feels like everyone is dealing and fighting with something autoimmune. What is
So
that
it's to
really
pay
about?
attention to the body. The body will tell you what it needs. Here, too, though, they're very similar with organs and things like that. Each of you is very individual in your experience, in your learning, and your absorption of information. And so it's true with the body. If you listen to the body, it will tell you where it needs something, where it's depleted, where it's not absorbing nutrients from. Know that medicine is getting innovation. So to utilize allopathic medicine and alternative medicine is good. But know that those who provide that information are still learning. They're practicing. You are the best healer of you. So not giving your power away, but listening to the body, where it's imbalanced, where you're eating something that you shouldn't be eating. The body will tell you. It's an inner knowing and listening that's of great import. For these are things that are just letting you know the body's out of balance. And it's always seeking to have homeostasis, balance, health. That's the miraculous part of a body. It will always try to find its perfect health. And medicine can assist in creating that balance when necessary. If there's something imbalanced or lacking, it can assist in bringing to balance, just like you take supplements for nutrition. Yes? If your body's not absorbing enough nutrients, then you supplement. That's what medicine can do supplementally. And medicine most often is made from nature. Not all of them are synthetic.
How, and final question, because I've taken up so much of your time, Theo, and I appreciate it. How can people just go deeper into themselves to cut off all this noise of which we're talking about? What is an easy way for people to be able to kind of, be able to expand within themselves?
Meditate. Sounds very simple, but most people think they have to go learn it somewhere. There are many forms of meditation and many teachers of it. And if one feels they need that, yes. But if you've ever daydreamed as a child or even as an adult, lost time and space looking out of a window, that is a meditation. It's a quieting of the mind and the body, and giving the opportunity of that time will allow you to recognize the quietness, the stillness inside, then open you more to all these possibilities we speak about. And to obtain that solid state of unconditional love of self, which is peace. Many speak, they want to be happy. That's relative. What you're looking for is being comfortable in your skin, being peace in your heart, that no matter what challenges you, you have the confidence and know you can move through that moment with ease and grace.
And we all have that ability to move through the moments with ease and grace.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you chatting with us and always looking over us with your words, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate the opportunity to serve. God's love unto you. Good day.
Good day. Welcome back.
Hi there.
How much do you retain or hear or remember?
I hear it all, but I don't retain everything. If I listen to this show, this recording, I'll go, oh, I know that. It's like overhearing a conversation, then you're reminded of it, but it's not a total conscious recall of everything that's said.
But you hear as it's coming in.
I hear it. Yeah, I do hear it.
And have you learned to just, or does it overtake it, turn off your critical mind, or can they work simultaneously?
That's a good question, because in the beginning, I was in total trance state. I didn't hear it. I didn't, it just was coming through me. And over the years, as I let go of any resistance I had, then I became more present in the ability to hear that it's going on. And in fact, I was laying down like Edgar Cayce in the beginning. And then over the years, then I sat up, and then they stood me up, and then they started walking with my body as soon as I was ready to accept those different changes. So I've learned over time is that I trust it so much that I can just, I liken it to going into a movie theater and they have all those seats, that I'm just sitting next to Theo in the movie theater. That's the best way I can describe it, because unless you've had the experience, I really don't have words, to really explain it, how it feels.
Do you feel the message has evolved and changed, or has it been consistent?
Both. there's there's been a consistent message of love that has always been, but it's evolved into a teaching. In the beginning, when I did this, everybody wanted a psychic reading, and that's not what Theo is. Theo's a spiritual teacher for us to evolve into this higher state of being, this higher conscious state. So that's where the evolution happened. Yes, they answered those questions, but it's become each more broad and deep since we're ready to change our consciousness. And that's what Theo talks about. We're laying new neural pathways in our brain, and we're really changing our minds. We're changing our brain activity to be more open and receptive to our own abilities, to our own awareness, to our own guidance. I tell people there's not a lot of job protection in that when Theo's teaching people to be me. and how to be comfortable in that. But that's what we're heading for. We all can do this in whatever form that it's comfortable for us. There's a lot of people that want to be channels, let's say, because it's popular,
Right.
and people want that connection, but we're all channels. We, each and every one of us, are expressing our soul energy. We're channeling that energy. However we're doing it, the artist paints the picture, the writer writes the book, the composer writes the song. I mean, that's all channeling our
Yeah.
soul energy in the direction of what we're to express in this lifetime.
Has Theo ever channeled through someone else?
They say no. They say no. We've asked that, or other people have asked that as well.
How has your relationship with Theo changed?
Well, I have awe in my life every day. I was going to say from being in awe of it. But I still have that in the information that's given. It's ever expanding me, and I'm ever learning. It doesn't get boring. So they're always giving new information or a new way of saying it. So I get the lesson better. So I've always been a student of Theo, and it's changed my life.
Have the two of you ever been at dinner, like you said, you meet at meals, and you just start talking about something, you're like, oh my God, that's a really good question about life. And then you ask Theo there, or do you always save it for?
Always save it. Ed's, Theo always encouraged me, have your life. If we wanted to have a body, we would have had a body. You have to live, it's your incarnation. We're just working with you. So they always encourage me to have Theo time and my time.
It is so interesting how one of the things they said, which I'm sure they've said a million times, and I've heard it before too, this idea of, but the way they said it was really interesting, of there's so many choices of incarnation, like the possibilities of because we were talking about the body specifically, and they were like, the possibilities, there are so many. And so it kind of, evokes this vision of like, you're ready to go and you're in a store and you get to just pick like, But it reminds you, no matter how hard it is or what you're going through, or however you feel about your body, good or bad, like there is a reason that that's what jumped out at you when you were choosing.
Well, and Theo also tells us that groups incarnate together to support each other's growth. So, when we have those moments, we meet somebody and you go, I know you. There's that instant. It's like when Marcus and I met. This is huge.
Yeah.
There's something we're supposed to do here. We all have those moments with people where we recognize their soul in some way. And, people are always talking about soulmates. And Theo says we can have many of them because of this group incarnating together, and they're on the same frequency of growth. How many people do we meet in a lifetime? Tens of thousands, just crossing people and walking on the street, wherever we might be. How many are you truly attracted to? How many people do you talk to? How many people become friends? Very few.
Right.
Really few.
And even talk about, you've been through 3 relationships, and I know Marcus too, like significant deep ones. Talk about even that as far as frequency or soulmate and just evolving it a different way.
Hey, Marcus, you want to talk about the evolution of soulmates?
Well, I think it, soulmate is a big topic. Twin flames is an even bigger topic for some people.
Yeah, people love the twin flame.
Yeah.
But I mean, just more people coming together. Like you were saying, it could be a best friend, it could be this. But when you talk about relationships, and you find, but it's interesting because we are all evolving at different paces.
We have a chapter in the book, Tal, called "Haven't We Met Somewhere Before?" And it is describing what's happening right now, right? So, I mean, how many times have we met somebody who you just like immediately go, oh my God, we finally found each other in this lifetime? And that was the experience that Sheila and I had. And I think that, in answer to your question, I think that people are evolving in such a way where, Theo calls it the weeding of the garden, and it's not a negative thing at all, right? When we have relationships that are no longer a vibrational match, some relationships that we've had for many years can be difficult to stay in if the person we're in relationship with wants to stay stuck in old patternings, right? Wants to stay stuck in a more of a victimized kind of mindset. It's difficult to want something more for somebody than they want for themselves, as you've heard many times, I'm sure. And so relationships are just evolving in an awesome way, frankly, because we're just getting, we're coming back together again. There's a sense of a reunion in this lifetime that's happening, which is deeply fulfilling. And I think the other piece of this is the ability, like we were talking a little bit about earlier in the conversation, to manifest these simultaneous multidimensional experiences within relationship. So beyond the physical body, beyond the five senses, and to, we've had experiences of lots of telepathy. We go into meditation when Sheila was in Colorado and I was here, and we'd go into meditation and come out an hour later and compare notes. And it would be amazing, the messages we were sending and receiving and how accurate they were. And so this is the kind of fun that people can have in relationships today, and it just, I don't know, it's just magical. It just expands the fun quotient, and that's one of the things that Theo's really been exalting us to do is to stop taking ourselves so seriously, just finding the humor in ourselves, which makes it a whole bunch easier to find the humor in others.
You need to create a dating app for that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. I am so appreciative. Your story together is incredible. What you guys continue to do to spread this work is obviously so important. I'm really grateful you gave me the time to talk to Theo too. I can't imagine that's not hard on your body in some ways. It's probably exhausting. So thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're so blended now. It's a good thing. In the beginning, it was a little ragged energetically, but now there's a nice blend to allow for it. So that's good.
See, it's funny because it's like you have two relationships, which I love. And so you're just watching how they're both developing. It's like you and Theo, and then you and Marcus.
Yeah. And Marcus and Theo have a great relationship. Marcus is so intuitive that when we do our mentoring programs and when we do events and people ask a question, he knows how to follow up on those questions to get a broader teaching or a broader information for the individual. And he's just so tuned into that. It's really a good match. It's a good blend of our energy.
It's fun sometimes I get to be Theo's straight man, Tal, which is really interesting. Occasionally I'm the butt of their jokes, and I find that to be one of my greatest honors.
I was going to ask, do they ever kind of like poke you?
They have a sense of humor. Yeah. And they do. They find us funny. That's what they say. Yeah.
Some people say, well, does Theo have a sense of humor? And it's very subtle. But we ask them about it, and they said, we're working on it.
Yeah.
That's so, because clearly they do, but they don't know how to express it in a way that goes to our definition.
Well, to your point, did I hear them? I can hear something they say and think, that's hysterical. And nobody laughs. And it's kind of like people get so serious, talking to angels. So now they'll just say, that was humor.
Like someone's taking note and then they have to like cross it out and be like, okay, that's not what I'm learning here.
Just feel funny, right?
Yeah, they're trying to lighten us up a little bit.
But I love that they're like, we're working on it too. Like it is amazing to show that, just the facets of how we all are. Well, thank you. And I know we have a personal practice from you guys, so everyone stay tuned for the personal practice, but I want to personally thank both of you for your time. This was really cool and love to have you back. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
We love it.
We also have a free gift towel if anybody wants to go to asktheo.com/love. Just ask THEO.com/love. We've got a free gift, a free experience with Theo, opportunity to purchase The Art of Relationship, Discover the Magic of Unconditional Love, a new book.
Thank you. And we'll put the link in our info too.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. It's so nice meeting you. We'll look forward to another time.
Same here. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Cal.
Bye.
Good to meet you.
You too. So now Sheila and Marcus will lead us in their personal practice, which will actually be Theo leading us in a meditation.
It is the beginning, is it not? Breathing in deeply, filling the lungs completely, exhaling audibly. Again, breathe. Inhalation, exhalation. Feeling the shoulders drop to the waist. Relaxed. Relax. Breathe. I am a divine soul, open and receptive to my guidance now. Breathe. The breath solidifying in the body, your divinity. I am connected to all that I am, all that I've been, and all that I will be now. Breathe in deep. Fill the lungs fully. Exhale slowly. Relaxed, open, receptive. Now, I am a divine being, connected to all that I am. Now, breathe in deeply, feeling the breath, filling the lungs, energizing each cell of the body, awake and aware and connected now. God's love unto you. Good day.